No rules, no fault. The birth of the Ambazonian jungle. There is no crime without a rule, law forbidding a behavior. Many Ambazonians at home and abroad are very disheartened at the way the restoration quest has been managed. Those playing major roles have used their surrogates to muscle anyone who even dare criticize their CIC. As a result, Ambazonians have turned to live by the rules of the jungle. That is, survival of the fittest. This is because there are no existing rules crafted by Ambazonians and accepted by Ambazonians as guardrails and guidelines of what to do, how to do, where or when to act. Without any rules of our own, with the resolve to not subject ourselves to LRC dictates and laws, colonial. Ambazonia is a free farm for any adventurer. Anyone can ask Ambazonians to pay taxes to his group, demand luckdowns, or kill anyone they deem to be a blackleg. This is a perfect combination for anarchy and chaos. No matter what we say or decry, there is no standard to hold anyone in Ambazonia. We are now guided by hysteria and momentum. This is a recipe for disaster. There is no society without rules or guidelines. Until we organize ourselves and craft rules of engagement, our duration in the tavern just started. Comrade Lyman. Time for community decisions on community issues. We might all disagree on the roles we should play as individuals or a collective. The minimum we can do is for us to accept reality and seek ways to use our disadvantages to our favor. How can we use the fact that Ambazonians are dispersed around the world for our good? Our ability to transform this issue of Ambazonian representation into value-adding concept shall dictate how we move going forward. What is lacking are clear rules of engagement. Since there are no rules guiding our collective aspiration, it is hard to take a collective decision where everyone sees themselves as part of it. We have abandoned our fate to individuals doing try and error, often at the expense of all Ambazonians. We need to outgrow our past reliance on charismatic individuals and their groups, our likes and dislikes. It is imperative that we build some level of consensus and craft rules that shall govern our restoration quest. The only way to keep the flames of our restoration quest burning is to have representatives of all Ambazonians worldwide to meet and set rules of engagement. We should never forget our objective. The restoration of our statehood remains the reason we are all here. Let us keep seeking a median where all Ambazonians can play an active role in their liberation. The time that only groups, group heads, and activists posed as the sole decision-makers is over. Let us accept reality. It is for us to make sure we rebuild the Ambazonia brand as we restore our statehood. Comrade Lyman.
Yes, you see, brothers, I have been a very critical person along the whole events going on in this struggle. From earlier times, not just from 2016, we have to understand that a revolution, actually, as I said before, is a process. It's like a living organism. You know, it has its periods, of excitement. It has what they call the spike. 2016 was a spike of the Southern Cameroon's emancipation. It doesn't really matter how good a leader was. If that spike doesn't occur, a leader cannot actually grab the moment, and we have to understand the reality of the nature of the system that we are in. I've always said, I wrote some things early enough talking about the risk structure of the Cameroons. Cameroons mean Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia and the Republic of Cameroon. We have to understand what the risk structure is. When these two nations came together, they were one-on-one on the risk structure. That means each one actually had the same power like the other one in terms of state, not numbers. But what La République de Cameroon did was struggle as much as possible to make sure that it becomes what they call the systemic risk, which means It's La Republic that really matters. That means if La Republic fails, Ambazonia fails automatically. Today, we've been 4 years into a very, very tumultuous state of things. The economy is grounded. Schools are not going on. There's war. But then La Republic still stands as if nothing is going on. Why? Because the risk profile and structure had been shifted in such a way that Ambazonia becomes what we call the idiosyncratic risk, which means a risk which actually depends only on itself. Meanwhile, La Republic becomes a systemic risk, which means a risk which depends on the whole. If La Republic stops breathing, we die. You see, so La Republic now becomes our mother, and we are the child in the pregnant mother. If that mother stops breathing, the child dies inside. But if the child dies with a quick operation, they can save the mother's life. That is the situation we have. So what we are struggling to do in Ambazonia is struggling to actually get back into what they call the part of the systemic risk, so that if we close our doors, La Republic can as well collapse. Think about it. What has been going on in Ambazonia for 4 years? If only Douala was shut down for 2 weeks and Yaoundé for 2 weeks, I mean just 2 weeks, you know what will happen? The whole of Cameroon crumbles. It crumbles. But then it does not crumble. Meanwhile, we are almost crumbled. Ambazonia is crumbled if you look at it very well. But then La Republic keeps on going as if nothing is happening, because they had disconnected and reconnected everything to depend and come from them. You see, and that is where our own parents actually let it go. We ourselves had never had the structure or the time to be able, or the latitude to actually fight. Today, if this revolution actually took traction, is because of the social media, that people can communicate to themselves, that people can actually express and tell what's going on. You won't believe that since 2016, it's now that a whole lot of Ambazonians from the age of maybe 20 or 15 till the age of even 60 are understanding the real history of Southern Cameroons. It's been out of the books, systematically kept out of the book, so that people should not really know what's going on. So when you see people talk about Article 1608 and all those were things kept only for enthusiasts or lawyers or people who were very much concerned about the colonial politics. These were not mainstream things. We didn't learn these things in schools. That's why today it's still very difficult to go out there and get any information about Southern Cameroons in the 1960s. Some of us grew up with parents who told us these things, or they had the pictures on the wall. We asked them these questions, for example, and they answered us, and we grew up with them like alternative history, not history in the books. You see, so like Franklin talked about the youths of today. The fun is, you'll be very surprised that even the adults don't know as much as the youths today know, because the adults didn't have the exposure. They didn't have the exposure. It was a different ball game. You had to go into a library to read. Today you don't need to go to the library. You go into the internet and get it from people. That is the difference. You don't have to look at this thing. Information is king. As I say, knowledge is king. What drives this revolution is what people know. It's not the guns. The guns are not shooting yet. You see, and again, if we didn't have the social media, La Republic would have actually crushed us to pulp. Because as soon as the world is conscious of what they are doing, then it also restricts them from going forward with the murdering. That's how it is. So actually, social media is what actually holds our back in this fight. And if we are conscious of that, then we have to see, so how do we get another leverage, knowing that we have social media behind us? How do we go forward now? That needs planning, that needs knowledge. You have to understand what I said before, for example, the capital structures and the beneficial ownership. That means who owns the system, who is running the system, who is paying for the party, who is paying for the party. You have to go deep. That's what I wrote that thing up there, that Franklin actually looked at it in a different form. You have to know, for example, who is uplifting and keeping Paul Biya, who gives him financial credit. You should have taken the most important thing there. Of all the money that the National Hydrocarbons Corporation of Cameroon gave to the presidency, 84% of that money in 2017 went to the B's, the BIR. 84%. 106 I think 106 billion CFA was given to the B. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Defense got just 30 billion. Those are the numbers we look at. That's what we call the capital structure and the beneficial ownership. It's what pays for the war. To understand this war, we have to go behind the curtains and see who is actually paying for the war, who is giving Biya credit, where is the money coming from, how does it keep him going, how does it pay his troops. If we don't see that, we'll fight for 50 years and still lose ultimately. You see, killing an elephant, you must not face it face to face. You might just go for its testicles. That's how it is, my brother. Thank you.